Good morning, AP Bureau. Today we're going to be talking about the Second Industrial Revolution. Between 1846 and 1932, about 50 million European citizens emigrated, and emigrated means left, from their homelands. After 1910, population growth in Europe declined or stayed the same. As we discussed yesterday in the reading, the Second Industrial Revolution was associated with steel, chemicals, electricity, and oil. Additionally, by the early 20th century, the Balkans and the Ottoman Empire continued to be economically backward. The last quarter of the 19th century, economic advance slowed. Bad weather and foreign competition put grave pressures on European agriculture and caused many European peasants to emigrate to other parts of the world. Overall, however, the general standard of living in the industrial nations improved in the second half of the 19th century. Yet many workers still lived and labored in abysmal conditions. During this time, a new word was coined. That new word, unemployment. So now you have the newly rich, the industrial newly rich. And the 19th century became the golden age of the middle class. Two levels of bourgeoisie emerged. You had an upper bourgeoisie made up of great bankers, merchants, and industrialists. They wanted free enterprise and high tariffs. On the other level, you had lower bourgeoisie. This was a wholly new element known as white-collar workers, and they made up the middle lower class, or petite bourgeoisie. In this lower bourgeoisie group, you had secretaries, retail clerks, and lower-level bureaucrats in business and government. They had middle-class goals and consciously sought to distance themselves from a lower-class lifestyle. As you can see from the drawings in the slide, you have the types of dress that were worn to distinguish themselves from other social classes. Significant tension and social anxiety marked relations among the diverse middle-class groups. Next, we see a political cartoon. The issues of working conditions, wages, and quality of life led to struggles between labor and capital. These stark contrasts in living conditions are what led to new economic ideas such as those of Karl Marx and Louis Blanc. But even for the struggles of the time, for workers and ordinary families, over time, the long-term impact of the Industrial Revolution was more favorable than it was negative. Until 1850, workers as a whole did not share in the general wealth produced by the Industrial Revolution. As a result of the diverse conditions faced by people during this period of history, you had new types of literature arise, and these were called social critics. So you see in the slide here, Charles Dickens was very good at depicting what was going on in this period of history. Poorhouses emerged to provide work to those who were unemployed. However, poorhouse conditions were often intentionally oppressive. A major goal of the poorhouse was to persuade unemployed workers to find work and leave. Charles Dickens wrote many classics that are considered to be social commentaries about the greedy capitalists and abused workers. An example is Scrooge. At this time, you also had something new develop, and that was private charities, and they provided food for people. The founder of the Cornerstone Church, a woman, is credited with starting soup kitchens to feed hungry people. '19th century women's experiences. Reform of women's property rights came in 1882 when Great Britain passed the Married Women's Property Act. European family law disadvantaged women. In Great Britain, adultery was the usual cause for divorce. But to obtain a divorce, a woman had to prove her husband's adultery plus other offenses, whereas men had to prove only his wife's adultery. Across Europe, some version of the double standard prevailed, whereby husbands' extramarital sexual relations were tolerated to a much larger degree than those of wives. In the late 19th century, family life, the ideal for middle-class women was to stay home. The responsibility for control of the children resided with the father, and contraception was illegal. Two major developments affected the economic lives of women during the Second Industrial Revolution. Large-scale expansion in a variety of jobs available to women. The withdrawal of many married women from the workforce. In France, marriages were arranged to benefit the family economically. As a result, French women viewed romantic marriage as a danger to social stability. Okay, so during this period of history, Jews were used as scapegoats for social problems, and anti-Semitic activities resulted. Pogroms were organized riots conducted by Russian police and right-wing groups against Jews. In the 1880s, organized anti-Semitism erupted in Germany. So now we're on to labor, socialism, and politics in World War I. Napoleon III at first used troops against strikes, but as his political power lessened, he allowed weak labor associations in 1868. The major question for late century socialist parties throughout Europe was whether revolution or democratic reform would improve the life of working class. The short-lived First International Association had a great impact on the future of European socialism. This organization gathered statistics, kept labor groups informed of mutual problems, and provided a forum to debate socialist doctrine. From these debates and activities, Marxism emerged as the single most important strand of socialism. The Fabian Society was Britain's most influential socialist group. And in Germany, the German Social Democratic Party was traced to the work of Ferdinand Lassalle. That's the end of the PowerPoint presentation for today on the second industrial revolution.